Good afternoon. It's Graham Coath with another MyMusic. In a minute, I'll be speaking to Tyrone. And when I do, I'm not going to ask him about ice cream because he just asked me whether I was. So I'll make sure I don't speak about ice cream unless, of course, he wants to. But first, this. I need to get going, Mel. I'll see you later. Tron, thanks for joining me today. Do you pronounce it Trond? Tron? Is the said?
It's the correct way to say it in English. It's Trond. If my mother calls my name, she would say Tron.
Tron, like that.
Yeah. If I did something wrong, she would go Tron. Or if someone wants me to do anything, they would say Trond. Well, in England they say Tron.
Yeah, there you go. Did you have a nickname in school?
Tut. I was called Tut, and the trommetron, which means the drummer Trond. Yeah,
that's nice. I quite like that. I mean, I could call you TT as well. There's
absolutely.
Yeah,
so my name is Tron Tons, but the Starbucks name. You probably have one too, but Graham is easy to understand. If you go to Starbucks in let's say Seattle, the hometown, and they ask you what's your name, to write on the cup. There we go, Tyrone, and I go, yeah, Tyrone. So that's how I got that name.
Oh, I see. There you go. Now we're going to talk about music. You mentioned that you saw another interview of mine where ice cream was mentioned. Ice cream in Norway, does that happen really? Because it's not a bit like England. Actually, most of the time, it's not that warm, is it?
No, it isn't. While it is cold winters, a typical summer thing would be to have some ice cream, and people tend to stretch that as far as they can on both sides of the summer. So I think it's a fairly interesting subject, actually. I started making my own ice cream made out of frozen berries and cream or sour cream. And I mix this together and I put it in the fridge. And after I've had the main course, I would serve this to myself or to my guests.
That sounds really nice.
We tried it.
Yeah. Well, is that more like a frozen yogurt then, in a way, is it?
It is, but you can use cream if you want the sweet part, or you can use sour cream if you want very sour, or yogurt, of course.
Really, really interesting. Hey, this is another show, though. Okay, this is
This is
Tyrone. This is Tyrone and Graham's food show, which could happen for the future. So tell me, going back to when you were young, were you from a musical family?
Yeah, I was brought up with music. I remember the old piano we had at home. It had a very special feature with, some pianos, you have the 3 pedals, and one of the pedals is usually to hold the dampen the
note.
The felt thing in. So with this piano, it was one string across the other strings, so it made this honky-tonky sound, which I loved, So I remember very early days going and making this sound with that piano, because I quite liked rock and roll, and I used to listen to Radio Luxembourg, on the shortwave. So that's probably where I picked it up. My parents were both playing music, and especially my father playing the harmonica and bass and piano. So I think they encouraged me to play music.
Well, what were the early things that Radio Luxembourg were playing that really resonated with you? I mean, what a great radio station.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And to me, everything was new, but it was Stones, Beatles, Zeppelin, all kinds of rocky things. Those are the things I remember well from Luxembourg radio. And then we, of
Yeah.
course, we had a Norwegian radio show, more the equivalent to John Peel show, called Pop something. It was on Monday nights. Yeah, really
And that was
nice.
alternative, more alternative music, was it?
Yeah, from the mainstream rock to the more alternative, because
Yeah.
we had a one channel system like, you know, BBC, but we had one radio station and one TV station when I grew
Yeah.
up, and there were just a few programs that would feature rock and pop productions early,
Sure.
and then it became, of course, more mainstream, and then people started using that as entertainment music.
I'm intrigued because I, you know, there's one area of music that I don't know an awful lot about, and I'm quite encyclopedic with music. But in the same way that, you know, someone like Björk was growing up in Iceland, and there was both, you know, access to pop music and pop culture and punk and that sort of thing, but there was also the Icelandic folk music, etc., and that kind of sifted through into what she was doing. Is there a kind of traditional Norwegian music that you grew up with as well?
There is a bit of that, but I would say that most of the Norwegian folk music is, it's very interesting. It's very rhythmical. It's uneven beat construction. So we have like 5+2, and it's not just like 4 square, 4 on the floor. Well, that is the melodies would go again and again and be very repetitive and very trance-like and very dance-oriented for folk dancing. The Swedish equivalent is much more melodic. So I always thought
Right.
with myself that the Swedish whole language and everything is much more melodic, and that maybe influenced more the melodic culture in a way. But there are really good old folk songs from Norway having that beautiful melody touch as well. So when we grew up, mainly the punk was more influentially, I think, and also Molde is a jazz city, so there was a lot of music stuff happening there, which also led me, at least, into experimental music early.
Oh, right. What sort of experimental music?
The first, when I was 11, I started going to shows, and Jacques Dijonette, for instance, and that sort of more free jazzy thing became more interesting for me. Lester Bowie and Chicago Ensemble of Chicago, and yeah, this kind of new ways of approaching it, I felt was really interesting.
Yeah. What about other people in your life when you were young that may have influenced you in terms of music? Were there particular friends that influenced you?
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, growing up as a little kid, and I didn't have a drum kit, so I was playing, rehearsing at school, at church. I was rehearsing, and then I got a drum kit at home, and then I had some friends who were older than me that taught me a bit of this and that, and of course we admired the older people who were more skilled in instruments than we were, and that at least that was very much the case for me, and especially one person that was really good at playing all the new synthesizers that time, which is now the Nodal Moogs and Prophet and the Roland synths. Absolutely fantastic, and I learned a lot of oscillators and music from this guy especially. He died very early, so
Oh no.
unfortunately, so very sad. But I think that whole heritage from a person like that would mean a lot to me.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I love playing with all of those analog synths and things as well. They're so much fun. It's fascinating that actually that so many musicians that I do talk to will mention church in part of their musical upbringing. Is, again, because I don't know, is Norwegian church quite different from our church over here? What sort of music was sung in church over there?
I think gospel had already entered the kind of young appeal things for the churches at that time, and I remember that drums were quite controversial because it belonged to the rock music thing, which I already loved. So for me, it was, I think, kind of the way I would approach it was like, okay, if I can practice here, if I can be here, this is where I can develop as a musician.
Yeah.
And
Do you know what? I'd forgotten all of that. I had actually forgotten, having grown up in a sort of church-based family myself. I'd forgotten there was that period where, drums were, as you say, associated with rock music and almost the music of the devil, etc. And then when drums did start coming to church, it was you had to come in a kind of tame way. You know, you couldn't be, you know, it had to kind of complement, but as long as it was subtle, it was okay. Yeah.
It wasn't a wild thing. I think if you wanted to perform in the church, that would definitely be the case, that you couldn't hit hard. And also these churches were built for the opposite acoustics, weren't they? They were built for the huge room, the wet room, so people could talk and sing loud. But for rhythmic instruments, it wouldn't work.
No, as soon as you start hitting the drums, that's the only thing anyone's going to hear. So yeah, that's, in a way though, that's really quite interesting, because that must teach you something in terms of control at quite a young age with drums, and also about useful things like space, etc., and acoustics.
Yeah, I also had a teacher who was a jazz musician who brought me to jazz clubs in the night to play together with all the people, and there I learned that thing I think you are pointing to now, the discipline of playing drums. So if you go wild, it's not interesting, but if you go super steady and then you do small changes to the beat or small breaks, and that's where the magic lies. And I think I learned a lot from these people.
Well, jazz players in particular are really, you know, in terms of learning that, really interested in things like rudiments, aren't they? And then developing a rudiment to, you know, in a more interesting way. But just that continuation of that rudiment, maybe on a different set of drums, to create the variation, etc. So you learned some of those kind of tricks, did you, with your jazz teacher?
Yeah, I did. I think I learned that, and also syncopation. You know, how does a bossa nova groove work? But I remember also when walking to school, and one friend of mine started listening to Joy Division, and we started talking about the jams and all the punk bands starting to sophisticate over to a new thing. So I remember that break into the post-punk era from the punk, because punk was very influential in Molde, and we had a lot of good punk bands, but also very many of those bands would develop into a more, you know, instrumental based skill sets for expressing new things, which I found really interesting. It was like oxygen coming into the room.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what was the breakthrough moment for you when you decided that, you know, that the love of music was actually going to be something you pursue?
I think I was like 15, and I moved from home, and I moved to another city where there was a music school, and I enrolled there, and I got a teacher from Argentina, and that was of course very interesting to have a drum teacher that had a total different background than just rock music, and with more Latino grooves. So I think I was already at that point dedicated to just stay with music for my whole life. Even now, I work in the industry now. I love playing in a band still, and I sing in a choir together with all the other people from bands, which is it's such a good way to be together with people and socialize. But also the music itself means a lot to me.
Yeah. Can I just ask, because it's always interesting for people to find out what is it that you do outside of drumming? What's your day to day?
Oh yeah, so I started early understanding that we need to be in front of the technological development when we are going to work with music in the future. So I studied a bit of media and communication at the University of Oslo. Then I started in a company which was very in front of the whole thing. So we started digital distribution, and we had some of the first contracts, like with iTunes in the US, which was the only place they had the store. And then when it rolled into Europe, we expanded it, and that company merged with another company, and together we became a new company called Phonophile, which we set up to be the biggest indie distributor in the Nordics. And then I moved to London and set up an office there with a great friend of mine still there, and then to New York and did the same thing. And then I moved to LA, and there was a new ownership group in that company, and they decided to sell it all to Sony Music. So then I jumped off, and I came back to Norway, and we now started a new tech company for developing tools for music, working together with Secretly Canadian, which you might know very well. The Secretly group, I mean. So Secretly Canadian and Jaguar and Sacred Bones from the group and of labels in the US. Fantastic people to work with, and we work with them for distribution, and then we work with also music videos and visuals. And also now I work with investments into in the indie music, because now we changed to streaming. A label putting investment into a release wouldn't get its money back in 1, 2, 3. Like, it's no 16 to 24 months anymore. It's like decades. So what do you do to finance that gap? And I think there's a lot of music to be released as indie music in the future, and it certainly needs that stronger finance part. And we hope to be part of that and invite rights owners also to be part of the company.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'd love to actually, outside of this interview, pick your brains about that a little bit more. I run a social media marketing business.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to talk about it.
Which I started up in the middle of this pandemic, having come out of a tech company. And it's kind of my passion, and that whole area of how musicians going forward, especially musicians trying to break through now, monetize everything, is really, really quite interesting. It needs inventiveness, it needs creativity at the heart of it in order to, it needs a completely different model. And so that's interesting that you're involved in that. One of the tips that I give everybody, this is a slight aside, but one of the tips that I give every band is that they should be producing a t-shirt with the streaming services on the main desired streaming service that someone's listening to that music on, but saying that I listen to this band on Spotify or on it. And the t-shirt pays for the t-shirt is the equivalent of the album. There you go.
So you mean as a merchandise, or do you mean?
I'm saying if at the end of the day the streaming service, that the music is ultimately almost free, and it's being the way that it's being absorbed is via a streaming service, is allow people to tell people that they're proudly streaming this on a particular service, but get them to buy the t-shirt to tell them that.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
I like the idea. I really like the idea. And I think the also vinyl is a format of merchandise now, much more
I
than it
think it
used to
is.
be. So yeah, so I think maybe Bandcamp has got something right. I hear a lot of musicians also in experimental music and very like narrow genres. They talk about Bandcamp being a good income source because they meet more people willing to invest in them with paying for the merchandise there. I don't know what your take on that is, if you've
I
interviewed people about that.
Most of the people that I interview will push towards Bandcamp in
Mm,
terms of the way that their music should be bought or absorbed or whatever, because of the percentages that Bandcamp give over. But I think it's two things. I think it's the community of the platform as well. I just think that because Bandcamp is very much community curated as well, that's the other thing that musicians like about it, and therefore a lot of people like about it as well, is that this isn't necessarily a famous person telling me that I've got to listen to this or that. That's the artists recommending other artists, or
mm,
just general people telling me I really like this, and here's my thought process. And if you follow that person and you like what they're listening to, you follow that stream down. I think it's the community aspect of it that people really like.
mm. I really like that, and the curative part. I think it's immensely important. Do you remember the festival called All Tomorrow's Parties?
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
so that part um, where the curation is happening by an artist, I think it's so strong. It's such a strong suggestion. I wish for more festivals like that. I would
yeah.
really love to go to something like that again.
So tell me about Permafrost. When did this start?
Well, I left Molde, and the year after I heard it's this fantastic band coming up, and I was really curious about it. And that was Frode and Kåre, and who's now in the band, and some other guys recording, just on a loft or garage. And Robert, who's now playing bass, he used to record it, and I heard some of the songs. I really loved it. So when I tried to get in touch with that band again, they just stopped playing. So years and years later, I've been playing in a band signed to, well, we self-released, and then we were an indie label, and then another band was signed to Polygram, and we were a bit on tour, and when we stopped playing together and put the band down, I was thinking, well, I won't play drums for a long time, or maybe never. Um, and then the phone rings, and there's a guy saying, "Hi, are you from Molde? And are you the one playing drums?" And I said, "Yeah, I used to play drums." So they've seen me at this punk jam, playing together with a fantastic guitar player called Børre from Stengt Dører, punk band. Um, uh, yeah, that was quite also big outside of Norway. And I said, "Yeah, I used to play the drums." And he said, "Yeah, I'm calling from Permafrost, and would you like to play with us?" And I said, uh, "I'd love to hear the music at least, but I don't know if I will play again." And so maybe I was a bit like, dried out of all of this. But when I heard the music, I was immediately calling back, because I thought it had so much soul with Curry's voice, and the guitar lines, and the very nice and clean melody lines.
I was going to say it's the melody that got you, wasn't it?
It was immediately, and yeah. So yeah, so I called them up and said, "Please, is the drum chair taken, or can I sit in?" And they would say, "Yeah, please come." And we start working together, and
Yeah.
yeah. So we developed a few new songs, and recorded a bit in studios in Oslo, and then everyone moved away, and I was in New York, I think, when we found out, let's get the band together again. We really need to do this because we love it so much. And I was staying a lot in Greenpoint, and a friend of mine is running a studio there, Brown Studios, and we got there and started recording without any rehearsing. So it was 6 years since we played, and we just started putting
Wow.
things together again.
Yeah.
And it
And
was
it just
really,
clicked into place like
fun.
that.
Yeah, but it's we actually developed things in the studio, which is an expensive maybe thing to do,
Yeah, isn't
but
it?
it really worked. Yeah. So we had some sketches, and then we just started working with it. And they
Yeah.
had this old Uno 106 synth, which was gone mad. So when you pressed it, it suddenly could go straight into all the sounds
Yeah.
and not hold the tone. The oscillator was fucked up somehow. So we used that synthesizer to put on some of the delays, and it became very cool with the accidental noisy things from the synth as well.
That sounds brilliant. Restore Us. You sent me a copy of Restore Us. Thank you very much for that. Fantastic song, and I really love the picture on the cover of it as well. It's just, you know, it's got that kind of obliqueness to it, etc. What prompted that particular song?
So after Daryl joined the band, we were going through the whole concept again, and we were thinking about what are we saying, what are we doing this for, and it was great inspiration to the other boys that Daryl also joined, and Bobby and Curry and Frode, who kind of have been originally following the band. Maybe they saw something new as well. At the same time, Restore Us is about what was happening at that time, which we could see what is happening to the political uh, big fields, really, with the Brexit in Britain, with Trump being elected as president in the US, and it was gloomy times, so to say. So I think Restore Us was born out of this feeling of being misplaced, or something is missing, something is wrong here, we need this to be fixed again. And it also, I think, reflects the whole climate situation, and how the world is going to go forward, isn't it? So that's at
I mean,
least what we think when we listen to the song now. Yeah. And did you see the video? Did you watch it?
Yeah. I mean, as a term, and as almost in the sense, it's fairly biblical in a way, if you know what I mean. In
Oh,
that
that's
it's
interesting.
yeah, in that you know, that as a term, Restore Us, is seeking some kind of power to take control here. Yeah, but you see the Restore Us in here as humanity restoring itself, or do you think that there's a greater plane out there that helps in that?
I think for this song, I think it's more like we have a need, we have a cry out for saying humanity needs to be restored, and I don't think we direct it at something outside of ourselves, even though things can be bigger than us. So maybe it's saying that universe, are we aligned, as humanity at the moment, or are we not?
Yeah.
I don't feel we have much religious aspects in the music, but maybe you're right. Maybe we should target the religious subgroups with this song and say this is about your God. I don't think that will happen though. I don't see that happening.
I don't know that it's religious. I wouldn't call myself overly religious these days anyway. But I'm very much a spiritual person, I would say, and maybe, as I say, there's a spiritual calling out from humanity to to find a common place again, maybe.
I think you're right in that approach, because the more I think of it when you say this now is the fact that when we think we are doing everything right ourselves as humanity, so we are developing new technology and new structures and developing the world, but it's not exactly going the right way, is it? So maybe we should start thinking about something being bigger than ourselves, and saying that, well, okay, we need to appeal to this instance outside to say that, okay, nature is quite smarter than we are still, so maybe we need to go into that circular economy, which is nature really. It's like what the whole ecosystem is about.
Yeah.
So maybe
I
that's a
find it
reminder to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that interesting talking to you about that from someone that's both a musician that's been involved in production of this single, but also someone that's involved in technology as well. Because I think, especially when you're involved in technology, I think there's a lot of technology that's been produced in recent years where we've kind of forgotten that, and we've actually, we just think that the technology can solve it, etc. But I actually think those people in technology need to start looking back at humanity again, and what is it that people actually want or need. Yeah. Do you know what I mean by that? I think sometimes technology, the concept of technology can run away with itself, that technology can solve the issues, whereas actually it's how can technology help us solve the issues.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I'm just thinking in terms of there's different kinds of approaches to technology as well, but I think technology and biological processes are going to get closer in the future. I just remember now when you were saying this, that I took train from Marseille to, I was going to Biarritz, and in France, and there I met some people. They had a drink and a cigarette in the hallway, and we started talking. And one of the guys, he said he was working on a project with making fungi as building materials. We were still using concrete, right? Which is a huge carbon dioxide emissioner. So they were constructing houses out of fungi, and this is 10 years ago. So I'm just thinking maybe the industry needs to get this push to change, to use new technology with maybe organic structures, and then it would be part of another kind of ecosystem than just leaving everything at ruins.
You're a fascinating guy, John. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.
You're putting on the 1 pound and asking me these interesting questions. I'm really happy to talk to you, Graham, and it was fun seeing your show a bit before I went into this interview. And
thank you.
I can see that you are a very spiritual person, but also highly communicative. And I hope you can come to Norway one day.
Yeah, no, I'd absolutely love that. So just so people know, because hopefully we've whetted their appetite to now go and find out what the music sounds like. I mean, that's the great thing about this show. I never play any of the music. And some people have said over the past, why don't you play the music on the show? Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is it's, you've got to deal with things like MCPRS if you do that, etc. The other thing is, I believe that actually if people hear about the people behind the music, it makes them more intrigued as to what the music actually sounds like. So I always hope that actually by talking with the personalities that people go and find out, and that seems to be the case, because people do tell me that they then go and listen to the music afterwards. They're intrigued. What is this music going to sound like? So if people want to hear your music, it's obviously on the streaming services and it's on Bandcamp. And up there at the moment is Restore Us out at the moment, or is it about to
Stores
be out?
is out, yeah, it is
Yeah.
out, and the video is quite fun because it's about the old America. It's Daryl's recording from I think it's 87 when he's traveling with Depeche Mode into Dallas, part of the tour, and you see these
Wow.
old symbols of
Yeah.
you know, the oil companies and the car companies and the new huge companies for food or toys developing, and it looks so hopeful. But now when we look at it now, it's it seems like a apocalypse
Yeah. Yeah.
sign, you know. So it's very strange to see, but I think it fits the lyric of the song quite well.
No, I
So I
do.
recommend people see that as well. And I hope certainly I didn't spoil any interest for Permafrost by talking about ice cream. But hey, it's cold rolls, isn't it? Both of them.
I don't think you did whatsoever. Trond, it's been an absolute pleasure, as I said, and thank you for joining me on another one of My Music. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham.
Bye-bye.
Bye.